Welcome, everyone. Joe Tarnowski with ECRM, and today we're going to learn about how retailers and brands can guide GLP-1 users along their shopping journey at retail. And to do that, we probably have one of the most qualified people in the world, Dr. Alexandra Sowa, who is the founder and CEO of SoWell Health. She's an obesity medicine specialist and the author of just released the Ozempic Revolution, which I know is going to be huge. We have 14 million households in the United States using GLP-1s. That number set to double by 2030. And this book provides all the guidance that if someone's considering GLP-1s, someone's taking GLP-1s, all the guidance that they need on how to best use it and address any side effects that might occur. So, Dr. Sowa, thank you so much for joining us. And to start off, can you give us a little background on your experience as a physician specializing in obesity medicine, and then a little bit about the book and why you decided to write it?
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me. So, as a physician, my interest in obesity medicine started back before I even knew what it was. I always knew I wanted to enter into preventive medicine. I really had a great education at NYU, but the majority of our medical school and then my internal medicine training was focused on end of disease state care. So, someone would come to us once they were pretty sick, and we would manage them with medications and kind of manage the disease to the best of its ability. And always, as part of that advice, was, you should lose some weight. But by the time that significant disease sets in, it becomes very, very hard to just lose weight. And I never felt great about that. So when I found the field of obesity and metabolic health medicine, there was no looking back. And so for the past 10 years, I have been practicing this exclusively. What's been amazing is that in the past few years, I went from a doctor that people looked at that I was a little fringe, even though I was board certified, doubly evidence-based, but people didn't know that there was this field. And I tell them that there were medications, including GLP-1 injectables, that were really transforming the way that we could treat and manage weight. And they would be like, what are you talking about, you crazy lady? And then within the last 2 years, as you know, the conversation and the interest in these medications has just exploded to the general public. And it's been amazing to see this transition, because we are starting to get closer to a place where we realize that obesity isn't a lack of willpower. It truly is a disease, and it's a disease that leads to many more diseases. So if we can get ahead of it and help treat that disease, we're doing very well in the preventive space. So I've loved this field, and I've loved helping patients, and they need a lot more, though, than just a prescription. Getting a prescription is one part of it, but that does not equal success. We need a lot of guidance, learning how to eat, how to think, how to exercise, how to change behaviors, and how do you supplement your lifestyle, right? I founded SoWell, a GLP-1 brand. It's a brand for GLP-1 users, because I knew that people on these medications needed a lot more support than what they were getting in the doctor's office. And we often need products, supplements, fiber, electrolytes, we'll get into it, but all of these other things, an ecosystem of products that were made just for them. And we need advice made just for them. So there was no book out on the market. And so I had this idea to translate what I was doing in my practice, helping people lose far beyond what they were doing in clinical trials with these medications, because they were getting additional support, to put all that information into this book and to make it accessible so that every single person who gets a prescription can have that same level of success and not just exist on the medications, but thrive on the medications.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. With most prescribed medications, there's usually some supplemental recommendations to go along with it. I see the commercials for, like, if you're on statins, take CoQ10,
Exactly.
so things like that. But this is so new to a lot of people that they really don't know where to go.
No, and in medical school, there was no training on nutrition. And these drugs have come out to the general public so quickly that many doctors are like, well, I see that the data says that this will help you, so I guess I'll give you a prescription. But that's about all that people are getting. Like, the doctors who are writing it, prescribers don't really know even what to tell you. And also, our current medical system is very limited in the amount of time that people can counsel people and can say, hey, listen, before you start, you really need to take a fiber. And in order to fend off fatigue, you are going to need an electrolyte. B6 will help too. And you need to eat like this, and you need to think like this, and you need to record your food in this way. And so I put it all into this book because you're not really going to get it in most doctors' offices.
Yeah, and you're right. There's the conversations are limited when that patient is in front of the doctor. You cannot get all that information,
Right.
or they need to talk about all the different side effects that they may be having, and they're unique to that person. So again, I think not only is this book great for the patients to have, but I also, and we're going to get into this in the conversation, it's great for retailers to have. Retailers should be selling it too, but they should also be reading it,
Yeah.
because this way they can address their customers too. So in general, what are some of the challenges that GLP users face with regards to nutrition and supplementation with the use of these drugs?
So two big things. So the majority of people experience side effects on these meds, and they're manageable though, especially if you know that they're coming and you know how to get ahead of them. So the things that people should be doing and retailers should be thinking about are one, the majority of side effects are gastrointestinal, so constipation, diarrhea, nausea. And we need products that support why we have these symptoms. So the GLP-1s work at the level of the brain, at the level of gastric emptying, and then they regulate the pancreas when it comes to blood sugar. And so because your stomach is emptying slower,
Mhm.
we will experience some GI upset. So fiber becomes very crucial to avoid constipation and diarrhea. Nausea will come on when people eat too little or too much. And so products that are devoted to kind of nausea and staying hydrated are very important. Same thing for fatigue. We get a lot of fatigue on these medications because people are not eating and drinking enough. And people aren't aware actually that the same mechanism that tells our brain to not eat is also saying you don't need to be thirsty. And that's where a lot of these symptoms start. So if you're aware that we need to get ahead of them, you can support yourself. Adequate nutrition is also key. So at the beginning stages of starting these medications, often appetite will go totally away. It will come back. It will come back, and that's not a problem. But at the beginning, sometimes people just don't want to eat at all. But you need to get nutrition. Otherwise, you're going to feel weak. You're going to lose more muscle mass than you are fat, which is not what we want. So protein becomes key. And so the way that we are getting that protein to the consumer, to the patient, is very important. Protein shakes are easy to take in. They don't take up a lot of volume, and they have significant bang for their buck. When you eat food, and I discuss this the whole method I lay out, the SoWell method in the book. When you eat, I want you to eat your protein first. I don't want anything else to take up volume in your stomach until you hit your protein goals. That is super important for adequate nutrition and for muscle mass retention. So beyond even protein shakes, protein supplements, food that's focused on protein intake first is very important for this consumer. And then the other thing I would say is remembering that I don't love to use the word convenience food, but convenience is very important because these symptoms come like a wave. Like they'll just come out of nowhere and they might hit you and knock you down. They don't necessarily happen when you're at home or at meal times. And so products that can be used on the go are really important for this consumer because they're thinking about food and drink so little that it's like the prep part can escape people. Now, I will
Mhm.
encourage people to prep and plan and take the food and make sure that they know what their next meal is going to be. But sometimes it just becomes 2 o'clock and you'll ask a patient, have you eaten or had anything to drink today? And they'll be like, I think I had 1 cup of coffee. Like, that's weird. Now that you
Mm.
ask, I didn't realize that. Well,
Yeah.
you need to kind of meet them where they are. So as soon as they realize that, they can consume something so they feel better.
So, and this spans not just supplements, vitamins and supplements, but also the food side of the store. So
Exactly.
yeah, it's food, nutrition, but also supplementation, some vitamins. There are lots of things that they need from all areas of the store. And then this changes over time, right? You mentioned like three different phases, right? You have the prep phase, the titration phase, the maintenance phase,
Mhm.
how does that change things for the user?
So as we go on these medications, generally people will titrate up to the dose that they need to get to their goals. And sometimes people can stay at the lower doses, but often we need to go up. So the prep phase is what I call the beginning phase. It's right when you read the book. And anyone can use this book, even if they've been on medications, especially if they're not getting as much success
Mhm.
as they want. But at the beginning, you're kind of preparing yourself, right? And SoWell is a part of that. So our company that provides our three-step GLP-1 support system, that's kind of like, I've got everything in front of me. I can feel comforted knowing that I've got the things I need right now before I even take my first shot, right? I've got the knowledge from the book. I've got products in hand. That's a place where you start to get ready. Now, not everyone's going to do that, right? We like instant gratification. We're human. So sometimes people might jump just to the shop. But if you can, taking some time. And I think it's actually really important for the retail experience too, so that when people come and fill their prescription for the first time, they actually might have a section dedicated just for them. And it's like, start here, right? There's
Mhm.
so much to take in daily life. And again, your doctor might not have said you need XYZ, but the retailer can tell them and help them with that. And then the titration phase is as we go up on the medications. And people don't realize this, but a lot of the side effects are really just happening at the beginning of every new dose, most commonly. And then they'll kind of
Mhm.
come out of the blue sometimes. But it's a long titration period. Even if you follow the normal schedule for a medication like Wegovy, it takes 5.5 months to get up to the full dose. So you might be dealing with that every month. And it might feel like this medication will always feel a little, for you, but it won't. You should be able to get past it. And as long as you have
Mhm.
the right support, you can move through. And then we move to maintenance. And maintenance does not mean you get to where your goals are and you take away the medication. In fact, these medications are FDA approved for long-term, potentially forever use. And that is because we treat obesity like any other chronic disease. There's a lot of misconceptions around that. But in the maintenance period, you might have different needs than you did in the prep and the titration. You maybe don't have as many side effects, but you have different nutritional needs because now we are getting into a muscle building phase, or we are getting into I actually have hunger again phase. And how do I make sure to eat so that I'm not working against the medication and that weight is coming back? So there are many phases that we can address this consumer and create products just for their needs.
I thought that was really interesting when you that you mentioned in the book about that hunger phase actually will
Mhm.
return, and that it won't be shut off as much, and that they need to keep that in mind when that
Right.
happens. So okay, so let's say a shopper walks into a retail location that sells both food and beverages and supplements, right? A
Mhm.
traditional grocery store,
Right.
and tells the store associate that they are a GLP-1 user.
Yeah.
What are some of the key things that store associate needs to know about that shopper before providing guidance to them, and how they would they go about providing guidance? Obviously, they should
So,
read a book. So
yeah,
that if
no,
they need to
no, and
know
I
it,
think
but
I think this is a complex question. So
yeah,
taking a moment to answer it, I think it's a great question. So right off the bat, kind of high level, just bear with me. I really want anyone who is interacting with a GLP-1 consumer to remember that the world has generally been pretty cruel to people who carry excess weight. And we have all grown up in this world, and all of us, including me, who's a specialist in this, if I'm honest, still carry some weight bias and stigma. And so I think in interacting with anyone, it's just understanding that it might have taken a long time for this consumer to be ready for this. And so to treat everybody with respect. Now, we're all trying to do that in every day, and I know that, but it's different. And anyone who's listening to this is like, yeah, I can feel that. This has been a long journey to get here. So one that. So let's start there. And then I think the other thing is to say, kind of address like, well, have you thought of do you know how to eat on this medication? Have you thought about different needs you might have? Did your doctor talk to you about any of these? And if they say, yes, I'm ready, great. And then you can, help direct them to where they need to go. And if not, I think it's a conversation of, well, some of the top three things that we notice that people experience are things like, dehydration. So make sure you're getting enough water, and we want to have electrolytes, and making sure you're your nutrition is on point, and protein shakes and supplements can help with that. And then again, when it comes to your GI side effects, your constipation, your diarrhea, your nausea, here are products to support that. It's my hope, and we are starting to see this, as you know, that every pharmacy, every retailer will have a section dedicated just to GLP-1 users. Now, one thing to note is that not every product that I've talked about in this category is appropriate for GLP-1 users. GLP-1 users have very specific needs. They have different nutritional needs and different taste needs. So this has been covered a lot in media, but GLP-1 users shop differently because their brain and their taste buds for the first time in their life are telling them to go to the Whole Foods, walk in the periphery of the store, and they don't want fake and super sweet things.
Mhm.
So things that might have appealed to a shopper before might not now. So like the extra sweet candy cane crush protein shake, that might not appeal anymore. People will be like, I don't want that. So I don't think we can put everything into that section that falls into these products, and we have to be careful about what that consumer is going to want and respond well to. So I think there's a lot of support we can give, and we don't want to burden anyone else working in retail. It's tough. There's just so many demands, especially behind the pharmacy counter. But hopefully we can, as awareness grows about what people need, more information, like my book is out in the world, and then retailers are kind of setting up their experience so that you can come in and say, okay, let's start here. Here are products that you might need. And then, in grocery store settings, I think it's an amazing opportunity to say, okay, start here, but then we're going to push you out. And here are some, whole food proteins and vegetables. And we're going to, support you in this recipe and these flyers and this little pamphlet. And this is made just for you. I mean, how unique and special is that?
Yeah, and I think I what you mentioned before about like when someone fills that prescription, having some guidance right there at the point of sale,
Yeah.
and then even maybe going beyond that to a special section, which is tough because sure you could do it in vitamin and supplements. You guys do it at SoWell Health, with your supplements. But when it comes to the food side too, right? Food is a part of it, so you
Yeah.
can't put them all together in one spot. But maybe some way of labeling or flagging, these are good for GLP-1 users. These are good,
Exactly.
throughout the store.
And we are starting to see that with some
Mhm,
labels, pop
mhm,
up. And I think even just a little bit of education could go a long way with the consumer too. You don't have
mhm,
to label every single thing that's appropriate for them, but like look out for this, X
mhm.
amount of protein in a serving, that's good for you.
Yep, and I'm assuming, when it comes to the suppliers themselves, that's the kind of thing they need to keep in mind too when they're either developing new products or maybe rebranding some existing ones in the face of everything that's going on. What would your recommendations be for suppliers?
I think I want suppliers to treat this whole evolution with a lot of respect, right? So it's one
Mhm,
thing to say like, hey, people are shopping differently. I really hope that people will lean into innovation and develop new products. And as we're coming to realize that, hey, this certain sweetener might not be so great or respond well, let's take it out. Let's evolve and create products that are really made just for this user. I think it's going to be a great time of innovation. And I think it's exciting because things are going to change from a top-down level with these medications. And ultimately, our hope is that less people have to be on the medications, but that we kind of revert back to maybe how our taste buds used to be and how we shop. So
mhm.
I think kind of continuing the evolution of what can we create for the consumer in this new path forward and not looking at it as a threat. I think some opinions are like, well, what do we do? This is really disrupting how we've been for the past 30 years.
Mhm.
Going to be okay. People still need to shop at grocery stores. They still want products that taste great. And we just kind of need to evolve.
Yes. Yep. Now, what about on the food service side, right? Dining out. They're not just buying products for home. Sure, they're probably dining out less,
Mhm.
but they still will dine out. What about restaurants and hospitality venues? What can they do to kind of engage or guide or, provide the right things for their guests?
I think I think we might, do you remember? I don't even know if they do this anymore, but like menus, will they have like different like low calorie or
Yep.
vegetarian, or they'll like do
Yep.
flags. I
Hmm.
haven't seen that as much recently, but I think we might start to see and embrace the GLP-1 label.
Hmm.
Like I said at the top of this interview, a couple years ago, people would just had no idea what these were. And if I had a
Hmm.
patient on a GLP-1, they would be very, very secretive about it. And now people are dying to share with their neighbor,
Hmm.
friend, cousin, sister that they're on this because so many people are. And actually, the content creation system on TikTok and Instagram has really helped this, actually. I think it's been a
Hmm.
wonderful thing for people feeling comfortable and proud that they now have a
Yep.
solution. And so, actually, I think instead of feeling like, oh, I'm ordering off the sad diet menu, people will be like, great, I'm eating off the GLP-1 menu. What do you have for me?
Hmm.
I think we can start to see that. I also think it's okay to just say maybe our portions are getting a little smaller, and
Hmm.
that's what people want. People are still going
Yeah.
to eat out. They're
Hmm.
still going to eat out and they're still going to crave the things that might have been their comfort foods. They just might eat it a little differently. So
Hmm.
portion size is different. And we might see just kind of less takeout and junk food. But I think that that's okay. We just need
Hmm.
to maybe pivot and have some more options for patients like that. But I'll tell you, all of my patients still have pizza night with their families and they'll go through the drive-through occasionally and they're still loving to eat out. Being on these medications does not mean you can't be a foodie.
Yeah. Yeah. And you are seeing, I see like here in New York and Queens, the restaurants in my neighborhood, you're seeing a lot of gluten-free options
Yeah.
indicated on the menus. Non-alcoholic beverages are all of a sudden they have their own section now. So you are seeing some of that. And but again, you bring up a good point. Maybe they'll just eat a little differently themselves.
Yeah.
It's not as restrictive in the items that they eat like gluten-free. It's more volume.
It's true. It's true. And it's a different way of thinking about it. It's not as restrictive. It's just a little different. So kind of like poll your consumers, ask
Hmm.
them. I actually think just going to the people that are coming to you, see what they need and want. I think, like again, people are willing to be open about this, and they're much more willing to be a part of the conversation. I think people are so excited that there finally is a solution. And again, it's not
Hmm.
just put on them. They're like, great products and menus just for me. I'm here for it.
Yep. No, that's it's definitely they said it's a thing. It's a thing. It's you see like you watch Jim Gaffigan, a comedian.
Yeah.
He makes that a part of his comedy routine
I
when he's
mean,
talking about it.
awesome.
What it's like to be skinny now, and he did a bit where he's talking about his he still has all his fat clothes because he knows he's going to get off of it eventually and go back to it. So, but yeah, so it is a lot more. But like you said, the stigma is gone. It's a little more out in the open. Um, do you see the GLP-1 drugs evolving over the next several years, and will this change things?
Yes. So we have a lot of new drugs in the pipeline. So drugs that might be more efficacious, even more if you
Mhm.
can believe it. Drugs that might have different delivery methods. So everything from a once monthly injection to an oral pill.
Mhm.
And I think it's only going to allow more people to be on these medications. And my big hope is that cost comes down and the burden of filling these medications and getting these medications and keeping them in your pharmacies and for the consumer to get them and pay for them will go down significantly. That's my hope. So I don't think the landscape will be changed negatively. I'm optimistic that it will be for the positive.
Gotcha. And I'm already seeing a lot of these compounding pharmacies, a lot of the telehealth ones like Row and Hims and Hers already offering GLP-1s for like 200 and change a month. And
Yeah,
I that's going to increase
it
usage too.
will, but actually, caveat, if you want to learn something about
Hmm.
compounds,
Yes.
so actually, the government is starting to get involved. And so compounding pharmacies might not be long for the world because the FDA says actually that once a medication is under patent, it really can't be duplicated in that way unless there's a shortage and those shortages are over.
Oh.
So it's a little bit up in the air what's going to happen there.
Mhm.
But yes, but listen, none of these platforms are going to stop offering the medications. I think that will get a little bit more streamlined and everything will become more affordable.
Yes.
GLP-1s in Europe are not $1,000 a month. They're about $100 a month.
Hmm.
And there's no reason that can't be here. And we just need our government to get involved. Not to get political, but that's kind of we have a lot of intermediaries
Hmm.
and we do need to make these more affordable because right now they're available for a select few. And there is a bill right now in government, in Congress, that says we will make these medications available through Medicare and Medicaid. And it's yet to be seen what will happen with that. That will really change things too.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, last question, right? You also run a company that develops a line of supplements, right? You
Mhm.
touched on it a little bit before.
Yeah.
I've interviewed Peter at one of our sessions about it, but can you give a quick overview of the supplement lines that you have
Yes.
and how you merchandise them?
So SoWell is the go-to brand for GLP-1 users. It was born out of my clinical practice. I realized many years ago that people needed supplementation to feel their best on these medications. And there wasn't really anything on the market that was taking all of the things that I was recommending, the 15 plus products, and putting it into kind of easy to use packets. Also, as I touched on, convenience is key for these users because their brain is so quiet from the noise of thinking about food that it often is hard to get people to prep ahead of time. So convenience is key. So I created a 3-step GLP-1 support protocol that we released back in August. It has 3 components: an electrolyte, a fiber, and a protein, and everything has multiple ingredients that address multiple side effects. And we have received such great feedbacks thus far. We're selling D2C and in retail, and that's how we've come to know you guys. We're really excited about the evolving ecosystem of products made just for the GLP-1 user. I could have just created a line of products that had these things in it, but I knew that we needed to make this just for the GLP-1 user, what their taste buds wanted, what their minds wanted, what their guts needed, and talk just directly to them. Again, kind of touched on this, but this community of people have been marginalized and felt like a lot that was out there was really not made for them or made them to feel worse, right? Like diet beverages and things that were kind of pushed down their throats for decades. And now they don't need that, but they do need other products. And so we've created a line of products made just for them. And the response has been outstanding. People love that we're so intimately know the customer. And just this week, someone told me that our line of products felt like a hug from a good friend. And I was like, well, that's everything I've ever wanted from this, right? She felt safe and taken care of. And that's how we are approaching this brand as we evolve and grow it, because there are more products that people need.
Excellent. Well, you make it easy, for them. There's you
Yeah.
notice it, everything's right there, and the shipper that contains all 3. I mean, when I first saw it in what was it in September? It was great. It was perfect. It was a nice setup, easy to implement, and
Yeah.
had everything there. So it just made so much sense, and that's why I interviewed Peter back then. So listen, buyers and sellers out there in the audience, get this book. Especially any retailer should have at least one of these in their store. You should be selling them, but you should have one of these in the store just to share with your associates. Let them read it. It'll give you all the information that you need from the user perspective, and that'll really help you address them in the stores when they're looking for help. So, Dr. Sowa, thank you so much. And again, I look forward to seeing you on a bestseller list, which is going to happen.
Thank you, Joe.